Welcome back for our second panel. We're actually missing one panelist, so if you think you ought to have been on this panel and you haven't got a microphone yet, then please present yourself in the corner over there and we'll try to mic you up. But we're going to start anyway. So the subject now is coordination between the actors, so how can the various people actually work together to make UAM a reality? Our moderator for this is Elisabeth LANDRICHTER, who comes from the CA Austria and is the Director General there. One more thing, please do remember to put in your Slido questions. We will also come back to some of the Slido questions afterwards. Again, if you missed it, the hashtag is 855146. Thank you very much, Elisabeth.
Introducing me, and a very warm welcome here in Amsterdam in the afternoon session for all of you who are present, and of course of all the audience who are listening online. Welcome to panel number 2, UAM Becoming a Reality. That's the topic of the conference as a whole. And the question we are discussing today, and we want to give some insight into, is the coordination with all the actors. Implementation of UAM requires all actors, of course, to work together in partnership and full coordination to achieve the common goals. And we are really very eager to discuss that with our distinguished panelists, very high-level panelists you will have the possibility to listen to and to ask questions to. And I'm very delighted to welcome Luc TYTGAT from EASA, Director of Strategy and Safety Management. He has had previously high-level and strategic positions within Eurocontrol and European Commission, and his directorate within EASA manages, among many other things, strategic coordination and stakeholders management, which is very much relevant for the topic of today. So welcome, Luc. Laurent Sisma from Leonardo is our panelist who we are waiting for. We do hope that he will have the possibility to join our panel, so let's hope for that. And I'm very happy to welcome Moritz Moroder from Flying Basket, Chief Executive Officer from Flying Basket. He's the CEO of Flying Basket, a European leader in the cargo drone industry. Flying Basket performs commercial operations not only in the home country of Italy, but also in other European countries, including my home country, Austria. As of today, Flying Basket drones that are designed and manufactured in-house can carry up to 100 kilo. Flying Basket is authorized to perform BVLOS lifting and transportation operations in the specific category. Welcome, Moritz.
Thank you.
Then I'm very happy to welcome Eamon Brennan, Director General of Eurocontrol. Prior to joining Eurocontrol, he was Chief Executive of Irish Aviation Authority, with responsibility for the safety regulation of the civil aviation sector and providing air navigation services in Irish airspace and ATC at major airports and North Atlantic communication. He also serves as chairman of CANSO, the global chairman of Copans Alliance, and has worked in the past with boards of Borealis or Aerion, etc. So, welcome, Eamon.
Thank you.
And I would very much like to welcome Gonzalo Velasco, a Director Airports Business Plan and Innovation from Ferrovial. Gonzalo currently leads for Ferrovial the development of business plans for the airports in the portfolio and for bidding processes, integrating current and future innovations initiatives into these. He is a member of the board of Heathrow, Aberdeen, Glasgow and Southampton airports, the chair of EGS Health, Safety, Security and Sustainable Committee, and the chair of ACI World Non-Aeronautical Revenues Committee. Within his innovation role, he launched the vertiports initiative in Ferrovial in 2018. He has a master's in aeronautical engineering MBA from EA Business School. So that's our very experienced and panelists which show and bring it expertise, know-how, and I'm very much looking forward to discuss the issues of UAM becoming reality and who is the leading part in that and how should the coordination between all the key players be implemented. So thank you for this. I would like to join you. So maybe, Luc, I would like to start with you, if that's okay for you, just with a question. EASA plays a very important role, of course, when it comes to UAM. And how do you, as EASA, see the coordination between all the stakeholders? Could you perhaps explain to us what the proposals you are putting for U-Space? And whether you believe that this approach, this U-Space approach, would be also useful for the implementation of UAM.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth, and good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be with you today to be part of this exercise, which we have to see today how the drones can become a reality. And at EASA, we believe that after the work, we have achieved in the regulatory framework, yes, there is time now to look at how the implementation of it should be organized. And the word coordination is certainly the key word we need to put forward. And it's not only coming from us, it's also coming from the study we did. And as Patrick mentioned this morning, when we made a study on the society acceptance, there was already a strong call for a coordination. And why the coordination is important? I think we are all well aware that, we speak about manned and unmanned aircraft, drones. We have quite a big, complex situation. There is a lot of automation, we have seen also today. And we have, on the top of that, creating by the regulatory framework new functions, which is the USSP, which is the Common Information Service Provider. So we have, in fact, proliferation of new things we need to face. So the key word here today is how we could help that by 23, 26 January 23, all of this is implemented properly. What is now proposed, and this is also mentioned in our U-Space regulation, Article 18F, there is a call for some mechanism for coordination, as I mentioned earlier. And what is coming now at surface is that we will need to promote the concept of a coordinator, a UAM coordinator, which will be coming in support of the national competent authority for each U-Space area which has been designated by the competent authority. And this function of coordinator will have to embrace many actors. They need to understand what are the constraints coming from the equipment supplier, the service providers. There are different service providers we mentioned earlier. We will have vertiport, we will have proximity of airport, we will have ANSPs, we will have the police, we will have enforcement, we will have the environmental dimension, we have seen in the panel before. And we have, of course, the privacy elements, which must be also embraced properly. So this function of coordinator, UAM coordinator, which is proposed in our acceptable means of compliance against material we are publishing now, it's certainly a key enabler for the implementation of it. And we would like very much this to be further defined and further discussed with the member states when we want to get this, the role properly established. So also one second element I want to say, Elisabeth, is the way to do it. We will not use a conventional way. This coordination function, coordinator, will have to make use of modern tools, and we are looking now how we can establish through an IT platform. We will design. Maybe you don't know that the Parliament issued a pilot project for proposing the EASA to develop some solutions to support the operators, to support the authorities. And we will, it was mentioned also by Patrick today, we will launch the development of this platform tool very quickly now. And that's really something we would like also to be available by January 23, to facilitate this coordination. So that's, in a nutshell, the way we see this requirement in terms of coordination.
Thank you very much. So you are already providing for the future, just thinking about how could coordination take place, but if you understand you correctly, you see space and place for other actors too, not only EASA in this field. Thank you very much for the beginning. So may I come to you, Moritz? Other actors, of course, play an important role. You are already in the drone business, operating cargo drones. So if we speak about the future, and not only future, the present and the future, what would you think are the most important steps? What experiences have you already made so far? What are your plans for the future, especially in the aspect of urban air mobility?
Thank you first for also having me on this panel here. Maybe just a short introduction to our company. Some of you might not know us. We started off with a quite simple idea, basically to make life of people simpler by using drones to carry things. We started off quite some years ago in completely unpopulated area. Really because they were the lowest risk operations that we could do, and but still starting to gain experience from actual operations. We have then been working a lot with national authorities as well as with the EASA to then step by step basically expand the kind of operations that we are allowed to do. So we started operating basically for different businesses, so telecom, energy, and logistics mostly, in real operations that actually help them. So coming then to the point where now we started from unpopulated areas, went to sparsely populated areas, and now we are approaching urban areas. This means that our approach is really this step-by-step approach that we think is the most reasonable one to take. So basically not just try straight out, go to the city center and try to fly with hundreds of aircraft, which would be something that might be really difficult also for the population just to basically get used to.
We see part of your presentation you have provided for us.
Exactly. So
if you want to manage.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
I think there. Anyway, I think there's. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So this is the approach that we have that I've talked about. So the kind of operations that we are actually doing today on a real commercial basis are either transport flights in sparsely populated areas or actually lifting flights, so basically replacing either the crane or the helicopter, also in urban or suburban industrial areas within controlled areas. So this kind of operations is are VELOS operations. Sometimes they also happen in or close to controlled airspace. And what we are doing on a basically proof of concept level is this kind of urban transportation flights over less populated areas. So in this case, we also have, for example, performed BVLOS logistic transport flights for the Italian post in the city of Torino. So it's actually a small metropolis with nearly 1 million inhabitants, where we have been able to fly and also for the first time in Italy test the interface from a US operator over the U-Space service provider, which in Italy's case is D-Flight, which is a daughter company of ANF, the Italian ANSP. So this means that, as you can see, we are pushing on one hand with proof of concept, with collaborations. So firstly with the national authorities and the EASA. On general, on the operations, what we now believe is really important for the future is on the technical aspect, the continued work towards allowing or basically also putting the means of compliance in place and everything is that is needed for the design verification, always in a way that is still proportional, still in the spirit of SORA, to basically allow this kind of operations from a technical and certification standpoint of view. And then on the other hand, for sure, the other thing that is very important is to make progress with U-Space. So let's say from operator perspective, the experience that we have made so far is that there are a lot of good ideas, but let's say the implementation of the U-Space is still lacking a lot. I believe on my side, and we are also now looking for partnerships both on a national level as also on a European level, to be able to at least start off with some more demonstrator projects with actual commercial operations, to really get to the next step also on the U-Space. And so basically, here just also a few small list of the kind of countries that we have operated in so far. So we have been obviously flying in Italy with the missions that I will actually show you also a video later of some logistic transport flights, Germany, Austria, recently also Denmark, and now still outside the EASA scope, but hopefully, probably they will still join in soon, Switzerland. And this kind of operation, like the operations that we have been doing in those countries have really helped us to get there on a step-by-step basis. This is all from me, from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moritz. Much experience already that you can bring in, have already shown in your presentation, and we will come back to your experiences later on. Thank you very much. Iman, I would like to address you in this regard. We all know that Eurocontrol plays a crucial part in the operational role and helping to support the successful rollout of UAM across Europe. What, in your opinion, are the main challenges policy stakeholders face?
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. I'll grab this off you if you don't mind. So if I can just basically move, I just wanted to mention that when we're talking about coordination, we're talking about where the old aviation world meets the new aviation world. And that's really very much what we're talking about here, because when you look at U-Space, you can see all the people we're familiar with, people who do aeronautical information, airports, ANSPs, air navigation service providers, people who provide infrastructure. But now we're faced today with a huge raft of other innovative actors who have come into place, people doing like Moritz is doing here, all of the kind of people providing services. So basically, coordinating is becoming a larger role than before, but it's not something that we should make too burdensome either. Now, I think when we talk about, drones and UAVs, we also need to be aware that the military have maybe 10 years more experience ahead of us in drones than we have at the moment. As we sit here today, drones are being used very effectively in the Ukraine. that we used in the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict last year really, really effectively. So it's really important that we realize that this happens. And in Eurocontrol, we regularly integrate, unmanned and manned drones into civilian airspace on a test basis with the network manager. So all of this is actually happening. So the biggest challenge we really have is trying to make sure that everybody understands everybody else's terminology. Because, I'm sitting here with a kind of a suit and a Hermes tie, and this guy's here in jeans and he doesn't have any socks on, okay? And I got to talk to this guy. And I've got to make sure that he understands, what we want, and I've got to get a bit younger, and he's got to figure out how to deal with this guy. So we got to make sure that we understand what it is we're all doing. And I think that's the biggest task. And I think the regulatory framework has been excellently set in an innovative way by EASA. So there's no reason that the industry can't crack on and move on and develop in a good way. And I think that's important. But coordination is the key role between stakeholders. And if we don't get that correctly, we're going to be in big trouble. So for me, we have to learn from people like the military. We have to also realize that in parallel to this outfit here, all flying drones, delivering sandwiches and pints of Guinness to me in Dublin, all of this kind of stuff, the reality is there's a whole aircraft and aviation industry as well, where we're doing regular services, and there's general aviation. So we got to mix everybody up together. Now, in Eurocontrol, we've done a lot over the last number of years, but we're really looking forward, I think, to basically the cooperation in putting together the Centre of Excellence for Drones and the Ile-de-France. And that's something that we've started with Thales, and it's in preparation for the Olympics as well. I mean, from our point of view in Eurocontrol, Elisabeth, the biggest challenge is how do we make sure that we integrate the various different types of airspace? We have the responsibility for the network of airspace. So, you got all of these guys racing around with their drones and their pints of Guinness and no socks on, and then you got me with the larger aircraft with paying passengers, trying to keep these guys really out. But that's important, that we all understand that we've got to live in the airspace together, and you've got to have a good business, and we've got to make sure that you've got a good business, because you're the future. So when you look at Volocopter and all of these things here this morning, it's really great to see them, because, the business case, there's a lot of money going into this industry. I know people investing billions into this industry, but from our point of view in Eurocontrol, it basically comes back to a really simple thing, and it's basically the risk assessment in the various airspaces. So if you're operating, in a city environment, it's a different type of situation than if you're operating basically close to an airport, or if you're operating where there are no buildings. So for us, some kind of airspace mapping and safety assessment is really important. And this is where the regulatory framework is good. And already we're looking at trial ones ranging from, Riga to Tallinn, and various ones that happen. But the next picture is a kind of a favorite one of mine, because it reminds me of Captain Kirk. All these guys flying around the city, and delivering pizzas, Guinness, medical supplies, library books. All of these things are happening, and we're all kind of sleeping away, and this is happening. We need to get a framework for this to happen. Now, for me, the question is, who does this? Now, Luke made a very good point about the national authorities. This isn't something we want air traffic control to be doing, because first of all, this industry can't afford air traffic control. Take it from me as a person who's provided it. Drones cannot afford air traffic control unless we're doing it for virtually nothing. So we've got to have a good system that the general air traffic management industry can trust what you do and can make sure that you actually operate it in a way that doesn't interfere with normal commercial aviation, but also that's safe as well, and this is EASA's big role, for those on the ground. So if I'm walking on the ground, I've no problem if a pizza falls in my head, but I've got a big problem if a 50 kg drone drops in my head. And, here on, we've got all these problems. So kind of just to finish up, we're faced with a multitude of different products on the market. I'm really, surprised and excited by the multitude of these things that are there. It's really good. From helicopters to drones, and we don't even see the military applications that are there as well, and also the things, for instance, where you're doing work on cabling and gas pipelines, and a lot of really good work that I think that drones can do, and can do in a cheaper way, and actually, I believe, in a quieter way and a less polluting way than some of the ways that we're doing them at the moment with standard helicopters. So kind of just to finish, to me, the European policymakers, we've got to make sure that you've got public awareness. Everybody understands what's happening with drones. Because believe me, you know, here's the difference. When I was a regulator, I could always control aircraft because to buy an aircraft, you needed a certificate of airworthiness. We issued this. To operate it, you needed a certificate for operation, an AOC. Here, you can buy the drone on the web. So as well as you guys operating and doing good business, you also have a vast amount of people who can readily access pretty expensive drones and can fly them. So I think you're going to be faced with a much larger need for strong public awareness. I think also test beds are important, and I think over the next few years, this is what we got to do, is work on places together where we can have test beds, and also that make sure that the funding is in place for the test beds, to make sure that you can operate them, we can test them, and if something goes wrong, we can move together to it. So from my point of view, you know, the leadership that EASA are exhibiting here today is really, really commendable. It's really important. But we also have to figure out how we need to integrate it into airspace. So these are the kind of challenges that I think that we're facing. And the Commission are developing a new drone leaders strategy and all of this. But it comes back to my opening remark, and I'm going to finish on this. This is where the old world, which is me and the aviators and the ATC and the network manager, collides with the new world, which is you and all these, and we have got to actually coexist and make sure that you flourish. So that's it from us. Thank you very much, Elisabeth.
Thank you very much, Simon. You just named it, old world versus new world. Innovation is always already here. We have seen it and we have heard much about that in the morning sessions already. To the new world, one stakeholder is very important. It's not only the manufacturers, in fact the operators, but also, of course, the infrastructure provider. So, Gonzalo, may I ask you, what needs to happen for UAM to become, here you are,
Thank you.
A reality, and what role should infrastructure developers have in this regard?
Thank you, Elisabeth, and thank you to the organizers, because I think this is a wonderful event in which all the industry is in a single room, in person, which is great. So I'll try to answer, but give me a few minutes, okay? Let's start with this picture. This is something that NASA has put on a paper. It's already an old paper, but this is what a lot of people have in mind. And I've heard in previous sessions saying we need people to understand. I think we need to communicate better. So that is the first thing, because at least from our point of view, we are not foreseeing, at least in the near future, hundreds, thousands of eVTOLs going over our heads, landing on our backyards. We are not seeing that future, really. At least in the near future. I don't know what will happen in some decades, but that is not the industry in which we want to get into. And I think that we need to do a better role in communicating this. And by the way, I will focus my conversation, my presentation on eVTOLs, not on the small drones. Apologies.
It's not small drone hours, so.
Well, it's big, sorry, but transporting people. And sorry. So this is the reality for us as infrastructure developers. This is what is triggering this new mode of transport, this new industry. And these aircraft are already here. I mean, 2024, 2025, that is already here. So based on the specifications of this aircraft, based on the performance of this aircraft, based on the certification type that they will get, is how we need to build the ecosystem. And this is in a very simple way, because this is a high-level conference. As I understand it, in a very, very high-level sense, these are the areas in which we believe that we need to get agreements around. So first of all, aircraft. We've talked about certification. Ground infrastructure, and I will talk later about vertiports, or infrastructure that could be accommodated for eVTOLs, and then airspace. And airspace has been discussed already. And we need to address this across the stakeholders. And we have public entities, and EASA is doing a great job at an EU level. But then we need to take that down to state level, nation level, local level, so region, city level. Then we have private companies, like the one that I represent. And for private companies, we need to find the right framework for the right balance of risk and reward. And it's not obvious at this point in time. So for infrastructure developers, we invest a lot of money in infrastructure that is going to be amortized in 20, 30 years' time. So you can understand that we need a framework for that. And then, obviously, the community. And the community has been a recurring topic today, which is good. Everyone understands that the community has to be there. But what is the community? The community are the users and the non-users. For us, what is more important are the non-users, because the reality is that this is not going to be a transport for masses. This is going to be a transport for a small percentage of the population. We are not saying that it's going to be exclusive or elite, but the reality is that in terms of percentage, it's small. So those are the non-users are the ones that we need to listen to. And I have to say that, Dominique, I don't know if you're still in the audience, but it is great that you are representing the community and that you are in these forums, because that is the voice that we need to have also. Following with the community, it's very interesting that in the research that EASA did it was just last year, the largest concerns from the community were around noise and safety, which is really surprising, because in terms of noise, we know that the manufacturers are saying that are not going to be more noisy than a car, so around 60 decibels at 100 meters distance. And then in terms of safety, they are going to be certified to the 10 to the minus 9, which is the same as commercial aircraft. So if those are really the objectives and the parameters under which these vehicles are going to be certified, why are these the real concerns of the community? So I think we have a task in terms of communicating better. We've also done some research in Spain. We ran a series of surveys, and we found that, aside from some reluctancy, in general, people would like to use this mode of transport in substitution of other modes of transport. Also, most of the users will be non-business users, which is very interesting. And also, they will be willing to pay twice the price that they are paying now for their existing mode of transport, assuming that it will save them around 50% of the time. So we are already knowing that there is a market there. And finally, what is our vision? So our vision as infrastructure developers is to create these zero-carbon operations on the air and on the ground. It has to be zero carbon. So low noise, as I've discussed. It has to be a seamless journey through the airport, through vertiports in this case. So no hurdles around the processes. Then it has to be as much integrated in the city as possible in order to reduce those first and last mile. Because we cannot forget that this is a door-to-door journey. Okay? So even if we shorten the journey on the air, we need to make sure that that first and last mile is also captured within the service proposition. Thank you. That is my introduction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gonzalo. I think you have a broad range of experience already with communities, with cities. You have shown that. You have experience in that field. So what would you say, what role could city play in this regard? Is there a role for cities? What would you expect?
Well, cities definitely have a role. They are the key ones from a public perspective that they need to be engaged at an early stage of the process. And every city is different, their governance is different, and you need to engage probably with the person that is responsible for mobility, or innovation, or infrastructure, urban planners. at the end of the day, they really need to understand this by us communicating better what is this about. And once they understand what is the service proposition for the community, then is when they need to talk then at a regional or national level, depending on the country, because every country has different framework, different regulation. But is that coordination that needs to be bottom-up, top-down, and we need to make sure that we are all aligned in that framework. But cities need to be there from now.
Mm-hmm. I think you have already also mentioned the land planning perspective in your presentation. I don't know how it works in other countries, but when I speak from Austria, I know that is really a very challenging part in that, making sure that land planning takes also on board the needs of might be the new developments in urban air mobility. Have you already had talks with cities concerning land planning activities?
Totally,
Yes.
and the reality is that this is air transport infrastructure. I mean, this is not, as I was mentioning before, this is not an aircraft that is going to land everywhere. There needs to be safety rules around it, and that framework already exists, and EASA has come up with a specific framework around the infrastructure design. So once the cities understand what are those requirements and that follows a framework, a regulatory framework, then is when we can assess where is the right fit. And obviously in cities it's not easy to get square meters. That is not easy at all. But we think that there are opportunities with new developments of transport hubs, for example, around bus stations, train stations, for example, where we can work together with the cities in order to create that space.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Look, we have learned that there is new regulation on the way for vertiports that should help the development of urban air mobility. Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on that? And second question to you, you have mentioned the platform you are developing just for making it much easier to push forward with urban air mobility. So that would be very interesting for our audience to learn a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you, Elisabeth. Yeah, on vertiport, I think the approach taken is to see how we could enable the emergence of vertiport solutions. Since now we have seen a lot of operations, a lot of services coming. We have to ensure that, I mean, authorities knows on which level of safety, I mean, they should be authorized or certified. And we are working on that now. So we have, in fact, some expertise in aerodrome certification now. And we have now to extend this to what we have learned from preparing the regulatory framework for drones for vertiport. And this is now, it should come at the same time, of course, as the regulatory framework should be into law in 24.
Thank you.
On your second question, yes, it's about a tool, an IT tool, which should be made available to help to facilitate the different authorities, but also operators to access the support they needed to know if they are authorized, or they know that what are the restrictions, for example, which are applicable today at this time of the day, or if we have to promulgate through this platform, I mean, the different legal obstacles to the operation. So rather than to have in each cities, each municipalities, a new mechanism to inform all, I mean, we have seen today, all the operators, all the parties. I mean, we would like to make available a mechanism to help to park data which are available locally speaking and to be available to the operators which need to know what is the rule applicable to that place in terms of noise, in terms of night flight conditions or cyber security or security, because they will all be different. Cities per city, so it will be a nightmare for an operator to know to benefit from the internal market to and that is there to enable the operations and also municipalities to be supported by something we design at European level. Because I think with what we have done so far at EASA is to offer to the whole community that is mentioned an overall holistic regulatory framework which should not be implemented, and the tools will be available. So that is what we are doing now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Luc. Before I come to the question of Slido, I would... pardon?
Sorry, the video, you can still play it.
Not sure. Okay. I would like to come back to Iman, to what you mentioned, that we could learn very much from military. In that respect, military, of course, is one of the stakeholders of airspace too. So do you see some need to talk to them, to coordinate with them when it comes to urban air mobility? Urban air mobility is a very specific field when it comes to airspace. Is there a need to coordinate with them?
Yeah, there definitely is, Elisabeth. I mean, we can learn a lot from the military. I think we can see this on the TV every day. They're very advanced, they're very precision-minded, and we coordinate with them very closely in Eurocontrol as well. So that's the thing that we do. But maybe I just want to make kind of a general point. We've a lot of test sites all over Europe, and you're doing testing, and everybody is doing testing, and various sites in Aalborg and everywhere in the Paris drone corridor, and all of these things are coming up, okay? But what strikes me is we're getting very close now to where we need to come up with something really big and throw everything at it. In other words, pick a site and pick a week where we put helicopters, drones, UAVs, military, everything we can think into the same airspace for a day or two over a populated area, and let's just do it. Because until eventually we do that, we're going to struggle. And this, of course, has big regulatory challenges for Luc here, and Patrick's probably saying no yet on my watch. But the reality is someday we are going to really have to put everything over the same city and then integrate it with commercial airspace like helicopter operations, like public transport operations, like short-haul aircraft, and see how does that actually work in practice. So what I think is that from a funding point of view, and it is coming up via CESAR and various funding, we really need to do this. So, and I think it would help the guys an awful lot if we all did this so that the public would see this in action. Because when you look at everything that's presented here today, what you tend to see is one drone dropping off this, one drone dropping off that, but you don't see 20 or 30 of them actually together in a sequence doing something mixed with helicopters and light aircraft. And that's what I'd like to see. And that's the big challenge, I think, between now and 2022, is to put that together.
Great idea.
I would like
Moritz, would you like that?
Yeah, I actually would like to, my mic, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would really like to see that. But what I also have to say is that we need to also take the first steps first. So I would like to shortly show you also a video, but just as a short intro to this. This was an operation, again, in Torino, in controlled airspace, where we also had to interface with the ANSP, and here the point is really that we sometimes are already facing problems with those little small steps. So while I would be totally in for trying to put all of this together, we also need to find basically solutions for those simpler problems for the commercial operations. Yeah, this is the wrong video. Anyway.
Goodness.
Okay.
But if you would like to explain a little bit what we've seen, I think it makes for...
Still from this video here, you can at least get a little bit of an impression of the types of operation that we do with the type of aircraft. So you also see it's not a small aircraft, it's a 170 kilograms maximum takeoff weight aircraft, which in the case of the Torino mission, we were flying and coordinating over the phone with the Italian U-Space service provider, who in turn then communicated with the air traffic control of the Torino airport, which is just not really a feasible process for daily operations. And the big difference between basically this idea and this vision for the future of the passenger transport, urban air mobility is, if we are honest, this is still at least some years out from now. And the opportunity that we have today is really allow the kind of cargo transport, urban air mobility, which can serve also as a type of commercial operation that can bring us a lot of experience that will be very, very useful for the future with the passenger transport. In our case, it's also a bit easier because we don't need like big fancy vertiports yet. With the kind of drones that we have, we are able to take off and land in quite small areas. For example, for the Italian Post, we do flights from logistics center to logistics center, which is already possible. But basically, we are facing the same kind of interaction problems with other air traffic as in the future will also the passenger transport.
Okay, Maurice, could I ask you a question? I mean, in the previous panel, we had the guy from Dublin who was delivering coffee in Guinness. So you're doing your work for the Italian Post. What happens when you encounter 6 or 7 of his drones dropping off coffee and Guinness, and you're all in the same airspace? What's your vision of how that works?
Yes, no, for sure. This needs to be an automated system. That's the main point. Also, already for having single drones interacting with just a small side note, I'm also a pilot, helicopter pilot, so I know how it is to sit inside the helicopter, and I also know how it is if you have to kind of be aware, especially of if you think of the future, 10 times, 100 times as many aircraft. It just doesn't work if you don't have a really seamless automated system that just gives you also, from a pilot perspective, the relevant information that is key for you. So as a pilot, I probably don't even want to know about the location of all the hundreds of drones. This is something that I want the basically U-Space to take care of me and really just give me key important information so that I can continue my journey safely. So yeah, just to answer that from the perspective of the US operator, we want to be able to plan our flights in a way that allows us to carry out our missions reliably. This is a challenge that we faced with the interfacing with the ANSP, basically, that from traditional aviation, you're very much used to be able, for example, to put traffic on hold, put on delays. This is something that is actually really challenging for us. For us, the ideal operation is, because we also, most of the operations are automatically executed, is being able to plan them. And have this plan approved not too much time before the flight, and then carry out these flights that usually don't take more than 10, 15 minutes. So it's a different kind of approach to the flight planning that we need to have in order to also be really able to integrate different kinds of drones in one airspace.
Thank you very much. When I come back to what you've just said and the example you just mentioned, just thinking about a test field where everybody can operate and we look what will happen. You mentioned technology should be prepared to give the information and the guidance then. So that brings me to the question, do we need anybody who manages that? The panel just wants to discuss. I'm now reading it. The discussion should identify who needs to take the lead in the implementation and who will assume the role of UAM coordinator. Might be that we not need anybody. Gonzalo, would you see a need for a UAM coordinating process and a person or institution, authority who should coordinate this process?
Yeah, as I alluded to before, I think that EASA is leading it, and it should continue to be that way, but then it needs to go down to the individual states. And I make a call to the states now to take action, because if just states at an EU level, then basically the work will be lost. So let's take it to the next level, and then to the next level, and let's get to the city level. And then once we get there, we can start interacting up and down and see how we can develop feasible frameworks. Because every state and every region and every city has its own governance and its own framework. So let's make sure that we have an overarching framework as we have it for what we call now traditional aviation. Now for this new aviation sector, to make sure that is something feasible, that is not the Jetsons, it's not futuristic, is the near future, is what is feasible.
So you see a need for an overarching framework, regulatory framework, if I understand you correctly?
Yeah, that is,
yes.
yeah, which is
and
EASA.
Somehow a hierarchy, of course, EASA's role as coordinator, but also on a state level. Yes. And who is it you will go to at state level?
Well, every state, I mean, has its own body. So,
do you think of the Aviation Authority?
Yeah, it's Aviation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
okay,
Aviation Authority. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, sorry.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. How would you see it? Is there a need for coordination process? I think there's much energy in the industry. There is a really big engagement and eagerness of regulators on European level as well as on national levels to support this development. So it might be that there is no need for any other coordination or coordinator.
So I must agree with you. I mean, there is already effectively a coordinator in this case, which is the regulator basically. What I think will be important to basically also keep the momentum and push is just not to basically wait for things to happen, but also try to put some more aggressive timelines, basically to also for the next step that needs to be taken. Here, I think projects for sure like CESAR and other initiatives with ANSP and Eurocontrol are key to go forward. But here, the real point is that we as companies cannot always wait as long as maybe it takes for the regulators to go forward. So with you
think that's somehow a process in parallel? Industry is just pushing forward, and of course,
yes.
regulators
we have
developing.
Yes, we have a lot of projects that are on the experimental side, let's say, but I think too little pressure for from European level to the national level to make a reference also to those different levels. We have too little pressure from the European level, I think, to the U-Space service providers or future U-Space service providers to actually implement at least, let's say, the minimum set of functions that we need to integrate the drones into the airspace. So we have a lot of talk also about which different functions U-Space service provider can take. But we, from a company perspective, need to have a timeline for when we will have at least a minimum set of integration into U-Space, I would say on a European level, not just in single areas, because the thing is, the business opportunities, let's say, they don't follow the areas that we decide. The business opportunities are all over Europe, and we as a company need to have a way to be able to operate all over Europe.
Well understood. I think that's the advantage of Europe, that we have a standardized process in this regard. Eamon, do we need an UAM coordinator? And who is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a number of levels. We've got EASA at the European level, and I think that's really important to set the framework, to set the standards. Then, you know, we can use the aviation value chain and go to the national regulators, and they can then have the standards, which are effectively EASA standards in coordination. But here I think we need a break then, because I think that, you know, we need to start looking at licensing service providers in the same way that we license airlines with AOCs to conduct a service. So if you take an average country, there could be 9 or 10 service providers licensed to the EASA standard, operating one in, say, one city, another one in another city. I don't think we need to go down the road of having kind of ANSPs doing this, because I don't think that the industry can actually afford it. So what I think we need to do is to recognize the fact that here is groundbreaking technology, geofencing technology, all of this thing. So we should look at maybe cities, you know, controlling their own thing. And I'm going to use something be a bit controversial. In the same way as they issue taxi licenses, they will issue a license for the air traffic provider for, you know, for Berlin, the air traffic provider for Frankfurt. And these will be different, but to the standards set by EASA and overseen by the regulator. So I don't think we should get into big monoliths and monopolies controlling this. It should be much more flexible, and it should be market-driven.
Thank you for that. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, sure. To create, yes, the opportunities for the operators, I think the idea is to certify the USSP and to offer them the possibility to provide services where they fit with for purpose. So that's really the major difference with the NSPs, where they've been designated and it's a bit stable, not to say the least. And there we have more agility, and this is probably the best for the service providers to be certified that way. Yeah.
Thank you, Luc. I would like to have a look at the questions we got via Slido. For perhaps one question to Ferrovial. The question is, finding space to build vertiports in urban centers will be a significant challenge. What is Ferrovial's strategy to find space and build up urban centers? Gonzalo.
I mentioned some of the challenges that we have for this, which are the obvious ones, the lack of space. But before looking at what is really the available space at the city, what we do, and I want the world match on this, what we do basically is assess where is that point of origin, what is that density of origin of trips or final destination, and we do that with a proprietary demand allocation model, basically using mobile phone data, which everyone has now on their hands, and basically companies track you. Even if you don't want it, they track you. And basically they know on an aggregated basis where people are moving. And by doing that, we identify which are those locations in which we should have a transport hub. And if it makes sense to have this new service that will compete with existing modes of transport. Once we do that, then we assess what is the art of the possible. We have ground constraints, we have airspace constraints. And then we need to find the balance between all those constraints and where is the optimal location. And we are finding some right away. Others is going to take some time to develop them. As I mentioned, that's why we need to work with the cities in order to make sure that the new developments are aligned with these new services.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have only very few time left, so I would like...
I can take maybe the first question.
The first question, yes, of course, Luc. Which stage is currently the EASA's repository of information on drones? This is part of coordination ecosystem 2. Information on certain drone operator will be reported from member state to via API. This is one way of communication, but how one can send a request towards the member state? Very interesting.
Just to respond to the timeline, because I think the question is about when it will be available, repository information. So it's available. I think there is a broker solution which has been designed and made available to authorities to exchange information on drone. Now, the national authorities are implementing the solution, and this is now a question of time and investment. So it's coming. So.
Step by step, and it is
I think
almost
9 to 10 states have already implemented, depending on the states. but it's coming now.
But it's good progress, you see.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Moritz, if it's okay, we will just take the question from slide 2. What state level are you compliant to, and which level are you targeting? Which issues are you facing? Short answer, if possible. Thank you.
Yes, sure. So right now, let's say this way, the main operations are the ones that we do commercially are SAIL 2 level with some operational mitigations in order to reduce the risk to this level. We target, so next step, obviously, after 2 comes 3, so 3 is the next step. But basically, we want to continue to climb up that ladder in the future. The main issue that we are facing right now around climbing this ladder, let's say, is not so much on the technical side, but on the regulatory side, really the clarity of how the regulation can be actually implemented from a both operator perspective as well as a manufacturer perspective. I'm talking also about design verification, and also in this context, always the changing basically expectation towards us as a manufacturer and operator. So just to mention an example, what 1 year ago still looked like would enable us to do SAIL 4 operations now looks like we already have to do this for SAIL 3 operations. And this basically changing playing field is very, very difficult for us as a company. Also because like we do steps towards the next level of operations while basically the requirements change. And also there, the alignment, let's say, in the interpretation between the different EU member states in what requirement and what the regulation actually means is another problem that still needs some more discussion between the NAAs, EASA, and the industry. I mean, we also represent the industry from within EUROCAE. We are a quite active member in different EUROCAE working groups in order to basically get this discussion forward.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for these very valuable contributions you have made to this topic, topic of urban air mobility. Which direction are we heading? Who should play an active role in coordinating the process? I'm looking to Luc. I think it's clear enough that the EASA has not only provided in time the regulation we all need, but that you are supporting the industry in the next years, of course, as Eurocontrol, for example, when it comes to technical support and all the expertise you have in this field and learning from military, as you have mentioned, and just to serve and support your needs, if it is for infrastructure purposes, knowing what is possible when it comes to regulation, for example, and of course making your business viable, affordable, and taking care that everything is flexible and agile. I think that's a good summary of our discussion, not only seeing the responsibility on the European level, on European Commission level, where it is really very much supportive the process. We have mentioned the strategy, which is now renewed, and the EASA and Eurocontrol, but also we have heard that the expectations towards the national authorities, the national aviation authorities, who should play and will play an active role in supporting urban air mobility. So thank you very much. A great and big applause to all distinguished panelists. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much to the panel for all of their contributions there. That's great, thank you. So we now actually have managed to find this video for Flying Basket, which Moritz was wanting to show. So we'd now actually like to show that during the changeover. We have a few moments between these two panels because we need to switch some of the microphones across. So it's a good moment to show it to you. So, ready? So.